You tell yourself you're lazy, don't you? When the dishes pile up, when the texts go unanswered, when you spend the entire day staring at a screen, doing absolutely nothing, even though there's everything to do. You call it laziness. But what if it isn't? What if this heaviness inside you, the one that makes even the simplest task feel like a mountain, has nothing to do with laziness and everything to do with a quiet kind of exhaustion you've never had the words for? What if you're not failing? What if you're simply overwhelmed? Because the truth is, you haven't stopped caring. You care so much, you've stopped functioning. You've been pushing yourself for so long that now, even breathing feels like work. Even resting feels unproductive. Even joy feels like a task on a list that keeps growing. And yet, when the energy runs out, when you need to stop, when you can't give any more, the only word you know how to call yourself is lazy. You've confused burnout with personal failure, but that's not your fault. This world taught you that. You were raised in a culture that idolizes productivity and shames rest. A world that praises the early riser, the late worker, the high performer, and leaves no room for the deeply tired. So, you swallowed the lie. You believed your worth was tied to how much you could do. And now, when your body and soul are begging for pause, you punish yourself for slowing down. But let me tell you something you may have never heard. You're not lazy. You're carrying too much. And no one ever taught you how to set it down. They never taught you how to say no without guilt, how to rest without shame, how to grieve the things you had to put aside just to make it through another day. They told you to toughen up, to push through, to get over it. So you did. You pushed, you persevered, you powered through. Even when you were empty, even when you were broken, even when your spirit was begging you to stop, you survived, but you forgot how to live. Now, the simplest things feel impossible because your nervous system is fried, your emotional tank is empty, and your soul is bruised from carrying more than it was ever meant to hold. And still, you keep calling yourself lazy. But listen closely now. The fact that you're tired doesn't mean you've failed. The fact that you need rest doesn't mean you're weak. It means you've been strong for too long without support. It means you've been holding it together in silence for far too many days. It means you've been functioning through burnout, and no one noticed, not even you, until now. So take this moment to stop blaming yourself, to stop punishing your fatigue, to stop calling your body's cries for rest a personal flaw. What if you looked at your exhaustion with compassion? What if, instead of saying, I should be doing more, you asked, what do I need right now? What if you believed that your rest is not something to earn, but something you inherently deserve? Let that thought breathe. You don't have to prove your worth by constantly pushing past your limits. You don't need to collapse to justify taking a break. You're allowed to pause. You're allowed to slow down. You're allowed to say, I'm not okay, without a 5-point plan for how you'll fix it. You are not lazy. You are carrying a quiet mountain, emotional labor, unspoken grief, years of self-neglect disguised as ambition, expectations that were never yours to carry, but you did anyway, because you didn't know how not to. You were too busy surviving to question it. But now, you're waking up. You're noticing the cost. And that awareness, this moment of clarity, is where healing begins. It won't be instant. You won't magically feel better after reading this. But maybe, just maybe, a small part of you feels seen for the first time in a long while. Maybe, for once, you can stop being at war with yourself. Maybe you can put down the guilt, even if just for a moment, and whisper, I'm tired. And that's okay. Because it is okay. More than okay. It's necessary. There's no glory in burnout. No gold star for self-destruction. No prize for being the last one standing when you're falling apart inside. You deserve better. Not because you've earned it, but because being human means needing rest, softness, and care. So, here's your permission. If you've been waiting for one, you can stop. You can breathe. You can rest. Without shame, without apology, without explanation. Because the truth is, you've been strong in ways no one saw. And now, you're allowed to be soft in ways they might not understand. This is not laziness. This is a body calling for peace, a heart asking for healing, a mind begging for stillness. This is the moment you stop pushing and start listening. You've carried enough. Let this be where you set it down. You know the look, don't you? The smile that says, I'm fine, when everything inside you is screaming otherwise. The calm tone, the steady voice, the no worries, I've got it. Even when your world is quietly crumbling, you've mastered the art of holding it together in front of your friends, your family, your coworkers, even in the mirror, but no one ever asks what it's costing you. They see your strength, but not the pressure. They admire your composure, but not the chaos behind it. They depend on you, but forget to ask if you have anything left to give. And the truth is, sometimes you don't. But you still show up, because somewhere along the way, you were taught that your value lives in your ability to be okay. Even when you're not, you've become the go-to person, the fixer, the dependable one, the strong one. You say yes when you want to scream no. You give when you're already empty. You listen when no one asks how you are. And you do it so well, they think you're fine. But here's what they don't see. That I'm good you said at work today, it took everything in you not to cry in the elevator. That small joke you made to lighten the mood, it was masking the panic attack you had the night before. That email you answered at midnight, you weren't being productive. You were trying not to fall apart. But you've become so good at surviving, you've forgotten what it feels like to actually be okay. There's a quiet loneliness in always being the strong one, because when you hold it together long enough, people stop checking if you're holding anything at all. They assume you're built for it, that you don't mind carrying the weight, that you'll always figure it out. So they hand you more responsibilities, more emotional labor, more expectations. And you say yes, not because you want to, but because the alternative, disappointing them, feels worse. Because somewhere deep inside, you've confused your ability to endure pain with your right to be loved. But let me ask you something. When was the last time someone looked at you and said, hey, you don't have to hold it all together for me? When was the last time you let yourself fall apart in front of someone else and they didn't flinch? You deserve that. You need that. Because even the strongest people break. Even the most dependable people get tired. Even the kindest souls reach their limit. And it's not weakness, it's biology. It's truth. It's human. The danger of always appearing strong is that you start believing your softness is a flaw, that needing help is shameful, that vulnerability is an inconvenience. But it's not. Let me say this clearly. Needing support doesn't make you a burden. Asking for help doesn't make you weak. Feeling overwhelmed doesn't mean you've failed. It means you've been human this entire time. You just forgot you're allowed to act like it. You've held space for everyone else. You've comforted, calmed, encouraged, carried. But when do you get to exhale? When do you get to stop being the strong one and just be real? Exhausted, uncertain, fragile, messy, still worthy of love, still worthy of rest, still worthy of everything good, even when you're not okay, especially when you're not okay. There is a deep kind of pain that comes from being seen as the one who never needs anything, because it means no one thinks to ask, no one offers, no one notices when your light starts to dim. And that kind of loneliness, it doesn't scream, it whispers. In the quiet moments, in the long nights, in the sighs you release when no one's watching. So, this is your permission. You're allowed to stop holding it all together. You're allowed to say, I can't do this right now. I'm not okay. I need help. Even if your voice shakes, even if the words feel foreign, even if you don't know what kind of help you need yet. You deserve to be supported, not just applauded for enduring. And maybe it starts here, with these words, with this moment, with this realization. You don't have to prove your strength by pretending nothing hurts. You don't have to break in silence just to protect other people's comfort. You are allowed to fall apart, and you are allowed to be held, not just by others, but by your own self-compassion. Because holding it together is not the badge of honor you were told it was. Sometimes the most courageous thing you can do is fall and let yourself be caught. There's a moment, right after you stop, when the task is set aside, when the noise quiets, when your body finally slows down. And instead of peace, you feel guilt, a deep buzzing guilt that says you didn't do enough. You should have kept going. You don't deserve to rest. Sound familiar? Because for so many of us, rest doesn't feel like relief. It feels like failure. You sit on the couch, and your mind races with what you could be doing. You try to nap, But instead of sinking into softness, you spiral into shame. You take a day off, but you spend it apologizing to yourself, to others, to the invisible voice in your head that demands justification for every breath you take that isn't productive. How did we get here? How did rest, something so essential, so human, become something we feel guilty for needing? Here's the hard truth. You were trained to believe that productivity equals worth, that output equals value, that unless you're moving, fixing, building, performing, you're not enough. You were praised for pushing through, rewarded for overextending, applauded when you sacrificed yourself for the goal. And over time, that praise became identity. You didn't just do things, you became what you did. So when you stop, you don't just pause an activity, you pause your entire sense of self. That's why rest feels scary. It asks you to face yourself without your accomplishments as armor. It asks you to sit with your feelings instead of outrunning them. It asks you to trust that your existence, without proof, without performance, is still meaningful. And that is terrifying, especially in a world that rewards hustle and punishes softness. So, let's reframe the story. What if rest isn't weakness but wisdom? What if the fatigue you feel isn't a flaw, but a perfectly valid response to the invisible labor you do every single day? Because the truth is, you're not just tired from work. You're tired from pretending, from carrying emotional weight, from silencing your needs, from constantly proving you deserve the space you take up. That kind of exhaustion doesn't go away with one nap. It requires healing, and healing begins when you stop punishing yourself for being human. Let me ask you something. When did you start believing that resting meant you weren't trying hard enough? Was it when they said sleep is for the weak? When they glorified 16-hour workdays? When they made rise and grind the anthem of success? You absorbed those messages. And now, even when your body begs for pause, your brain says, keep going. Even when you're limping, you're still whispering, push through. But for what? For whose approval? And at what cost? You see, burnout doesn't just happen from doing too much. It happens from never allowing yourself to stop, from being in a constant state of tension, from believing your worth must be earned every single day. But here's what they didn't tell you. Rest is part of the work. Recovery is a strategy. And slowing down is not the opposite of growth. It's what makes growth sustainable. You are not a machine. You're a living, breathing being with limits that deserve respect, not shame. It's time to unlearn the guilt, to rewrite the rulebook that says, rest is a reward. Rest must be earned. Rest is only allowed when everything is done. Because here's the truth. Rest is a right. It is your body's way of saying, I need to repair. I need to feel. I need space to just be. You don't owe anyone an explanation for that. Not your boss, not your friends, not even that voice in your head that always demands more. So, the next time you feel that wave of guilt creep in while you're lying in bed, while you're turning down a social plan, while you're doing nothing, remember this. Doing nothing is sometimes the most powerful thing you can do, because in those quiet moments, your body remembers safety. Your nervous system gets to exhale. Your spirit has a chance to catch up with your life. That's not failure. That's medicine. And one more thing, rest doesn't need to look like a spa day or a vacation. Sometimes it's saying no when you always say yes. Sometimes it's turning off your phone. Sometimes it's taking 5 deep breaths before you walk into a room. Sometimes it's crying. Sometimes it's laughing. Sometimes it's letting the dishes sit in the sink and choosing your peace instead. Rest is whatever reconnects you to yourself. And the more you practice it, without guilt, without apology, the more you teach your body it is safe to stop. You are not lazy. You are learning to love yourself without condition. You are not behind. You are exactly where you need to be to begin again. And you are not failing just because you're tired. You are wise enough to listen when your body says, I need a break. Please give me that gift. So please, stop calling it failure. Start calling it what it is, a revolution. There's a truth most people don't want to face. Healing isn't always about what you do. Sometimes it's about where you are. You can read all the self-help books, practice meditation, try gratitude, drink water, go to therapy. But if you're still waking up in the same environment that broke you, the same conversations, the same patterns, the same expectations that drained you in the first place, then healing becomes a fight you're not meant to win. because you can't bloom in soil that keeps pulling you under. Let's be real for a second. Sometimes the weight on your shoulders isn't yours. It's the room you're standing in, the energy you keep absorbing, the people you keep trying to please. It's the culture at work that praises over commitment and punishes boundaries. It's the friend who only calls when they need something. It's the partner who makes you feel like you're always asking for too much, even when you're asking for the bare minimum. It's the home that's filled with silence, tension, or unspoken resentment. It's the scrolling at night because you're too tired to sleep, but too anxious to be alone with your thoughts. And then you wonder why you feel stuck. You blame yourself. You think you're just not healing fast enough. But maybe you're just not supposed to heal there. Imagine this. You break your leg, but instead of resting it, you go back to running marathons because everyone else is doing fine. That would be insane, right? But emotionally, that's exactly what so many of us do. We get hurt, burned out, overwhelmed, and then we return to the same pressure, the same pace, the same people, and wonder why we feel worse. You can't recover from a storm while still standing in the rain. Let's talk about loyalty for a second. Many people stay in toxic environments not because they're happy, but because they feel guilty for leaving. You've been taught that leaving means giving up, that walking away is weakness, that discomfort is the price of being strong. But what if strength looks different? What if strength is setting the boundary everyone else is too scared to draw? What if healing means saying, I love you, but I love myself more right now? What if your breakthrough isn't in fixing what's broken, but in stepping outside of it? Here's something hard to admit. Not everyone deserves access to you. Not every job deserves your loyalty. Not every place deserves your presence. Not every relationship deserves another chance. Some spaces were never built for you to thrive. They were only built for you to serve, to endure, to remain small. You don't owe your suffering to anything that refuses to grow with you. You don't have to stay just because you used to belong. And yes, leaving hurts, even when it's the right thing, even when it's long overdue, even when everything inside you knows you're suffocating. Because the moment you step out, you're met with silence, doubt, that voice in your head that says, maybe it wasn't that bad. Maybe I'm overreacting. Maybe if I had just tried harder. But let me remind you of something. You already tried. You tried when you stayed quiet to keep the peace. You tried when you bent your boundaries. You tried when you blamed yourself for being tired all the time. You tried when you smiled through the burnout and called it discipline. Leaving isn't failure. It's recognition. It's honesty. It's choosing your future over your fear. This is not about becoming selfish. It's about becoming whole. There's a version of you on the other side of that hard decision that sleeps better, breathes deeper, laughs without watching your back, creates without second guessing, loves without losing yourself. But that version doesn't live here, in this place, in this job, in this loop. That version of you is waiting on the other side of release. You may lose people, you may disappoint expectations, you may leave behind comfort, familiarity, and old versions of yourself. But what you gain? Peace, clarity, energy, time, space to become someone you haven't met yet, but already miss. You gain yourself. So here's the permission you might need. You can leave the group chat, you can change careers, you can move cities, you can outgrow people. You can stop texting back. You can protect your energy without explaining it to anyone. You are not obligated to remain in environments that treat your exhaustion as a character flaw. You deserve better, not because you earned it, but because you exist. And existence alone is enough reason to protect your peace. Sometimes the bravest thing you can do is walk away from what numbs you and walk toward what revives you, even if you don't know what that looks like yet. Because staying stuck in survival isn't loyalty. It's fear. And your healing will never feel safe in the place where your pain was normalized. So go, not to run away, but to return to yourself. You can't heal in the same environment that made you sick, and you don't have to. Somewhere along the way, your to-do list became your identity. You started measuring your value by how much you could accomplish. You started confusing doing with being. You believed the more boxes you checked, the more worthy you became. And on the days you didn't get much done, you didn't just feel unproductive, you felt useless. Let that sink in. This isn't about time management. This is about self-worth. You were taught that your output is your value, That busyness is a badge of honor. That rest is only acceptable when it's earned through exhaustion. That slowing down is suspicious. That ease is laziness in disguise. And you believed it. Because they praised you when you overextended. They called you driven when you never said no. They admired your work ethic while ignoring your quiet burnout. And so, you built your life around performance. You learned early that being useful was how you kept love. That being needed was how you stayed safe. That being busy was how you avoided feelings. So, productivity became your coping mechanism. When life felt uncertain, you worked. When you felt anxious, you worked. When you didn't know how to rest, you filled the silence with tasks. Because as long as you were producing something, you didn't have to sit with the question, who am I when I'm not getting things done? And that question, it terrified you. Here's what no one tells you. Productivity can be just as numbing as alcohol, just as distracting as scrolling, just as addictive as any substance. Because when you're moving constantly, you don't have to feel. You don't have to face the grief, the fear, the inadequacy, the emptiness that creeps in when you finally stop. But avoiding those feelings by overworking doesn't heal them. It just buries them. And one day, they come back as fatigue, as burnout, as that moment when you look around and think, I've done everything they said would make me feel worthy. So why do I still feel hollow? Let's be clear. Being productive isn't bad. Working hard isn't bad. Wanting to grow, build, achieve isn't bad. But when you tie your worth to it, you start believing that rest equals regression, that ease equals laziness, that your soul must be earned with sweat. And that belief, it will eat you alive, because it means you'll never feel like enough, no matter how much you do, no matter how well you perform, no matter how successful you become. Because the voice in your head will always whisper, if you stop, they'll stop loving you. If you rest, you'll fall behind. If you ease up, you'll lose everything. But none of that is true. It's just fear, dressed up as discipline. So, let's rewrite the story. You are not the sum of your achievements. You are not your resume. You are not your salary. You are not the weight you lift, the hours you log, or the titles you hold. You are a human being, not a machine, not a brand, not a performance. And your worth, it's inherent. It existed before your first job, before your first grade, before you ever proved a thing. You were worthy the moment you took your first breath. And you'll be worthy long after the world stops clapping. Here's the hard truth. If you don't separate your worth from your work, you will never feel safe resting. Because rest will always feel like losing value. Slowing down will always feel like falling behind. And ease will always feel like weakness. Until you realize you are not here to prove yourself. You are here to be yourself. To create, not because you have to, but because it brings you joy. To rest, not because you've earned it, but because you need it. To live a life that feels like yours, not a checklist of what successful should look like. Let me ask you, when was the last time you did something that had no measurable outcome, no monetary value, no achievement attached, just pleasure, just presence, just because it made you feel alive? That version of you still exists, still remembers how to play, still knows how to be without performing, and they're waiting for you, on the other side of the pressure. It's okay to slow down. It's okay to be present instead of productive. It's okay to rest without earning it. It's okay to exist without explanation, because you are not here to meet someone else's metrics. You are not here to burn out in the name of success. You are not here to make your soul digestible to a world that only values you when you produce. You are here to live, fully, freely, without condition. And sometimes that begins the moment you stop proving and start remembering. You were always enough. You wake up tired. You power through the day on autopilot. You check the boxes, answer the messages, show up where you're expected to. And then, when the world finally quiets down, you sit in the dark, phone in hand, staring at nothing. Not because you're lazy, not because you're weak, but because you're in survival mode. And survival mode, it's not living, it's bracing, it's enduring, it's putting one foot in front of the other with no sense of direction, just hoping you make it through the next hour. It's the constant hum of what's next. It's the inability to breathe fully. It's the muscle memory of pretending you're fine when you're actually falling apart. Most people don't even know they're in it. Because survival mode wears a lot of disguises. It looks like being high functioning, like having a packed calendar, like always being available, like saying, "I'm just busy" when someone asks how you're doing. But under the surface, you're barely holding on. You forget things more often. You snap at small inconveniences. You numb out with food, screens, noise, anything to avoid the silence. You feel disconnected from joy, even in moments that should feel good. And worst of all, you can't remember the last time you felt truly rested, because rest isn't possible when your nervous system believes you're in danger, even if the danger is just another deadline, another demand, another day pretending everything's okay. Here's something most people don't understand. You can be stable and still be in survival mode. You can pay your bills, show up to work, maintain relationships, and still feel like you're drowning on the inside. Because survival isn't just about escaping a burning building, it's about being stuck in a life that constantly burns through your energy without ever offering you space to refuel. And when this goes on long enough, you stop dreaming, you stop hoping, you stop imagining anything beyond the next task, the next obligation, the next thing. You start thinking, this is just who I am now. But it's not. You're not broken, you're burned out. There's a difference. So, how do you know if you're in survival mode? Start here. Do you feel guilty resting? Do you get through the day but crash as soon as you're alone? Do you have constant low-level anxiety but can't pinpoint why? Do you avoid silence because it makes you feel more overwhelmed, not less? Do you feel like your life is happening to you instead of something you're actively living? If you answered yes to most of those, you're not alone. So many people are stuck in this cycle, especially the ones who look like they have it all together, especially you. Because high-functioning burnout doesn't get noticed. You still show up, you still smile, you still reply with, "I'm good, just tired." But behind that is exhaustion you don't even know how to name. Let's call it what it is. This isn't sustainable. And more importantly, it's not your fault. You didn't choose this state. You were forced into it, by circumstances, by pressure, by responsibilities no one else would take on, by beliefs that said, you have to be everything for everyone, always. But now, you get to choose something else. You get to interrupt the pattern. You get to say, I'm done living in emergency mode, because you can't build a life when your body thinks it's always under threat. You can't feel joy when your brain is stuck in self-preservation. You can't live if you're constantly just trying to survive. So, what does healing look like? At first, it's awkward, uncomfortable, unfamiliar, because safety isn't something your nervous system recognizes right away, especially if you've lived in survival mode for years. But slowly, it begins with the smallest acts, sitting in silence without panic, saying no without explaining, crying without apologizing, sleeping without guilt, letting go of urgency, and letting yourself just be. It means asking yourself each day, what would feel nourishing right now? Not productive, not impressive, not efficient, just nourishing. It means understanding that your body doesn't trust rest yet, but it will, in time, with consistency, with compassion. And here's the part that might surprise you. You don't have to wait for a breakdown to make this shift. You don't have to collapse before you're allowed to rest. You don't need anyone's permission to slow down. You don't need a crisis to begin healing. You can decide, today, to stop equating chaos with importance, to stop treating exhaustion as a badge of honor, to stop normalizing stress just because it's common. You can choose to build a life where your peace matters more than your productivity, where your nervous system is no longer hijacked by constant urgency, where you get to live, not just endure. Let this be the moment. Let this be the soft exhale that says, I don't want to survive like this anymore. Because survival is instinct, but living is a choice, and you deserve to choose it. You feel it before you say it. That tightness in your chest when you want to cancel plans. The anxiety that creeps in when you say no to another invitation. The need to give a reason, a good one, so they won't think less of you. Because in your mind, I need rest never feels like enough. You've been taught that slowing down requires justification, that unless you're sick, grieving, or falling apart, you don't get to pause. So you pile up excuses. You scramble for reasons that sound more valid. You lie softly, kindly, because the truth feels too shameful to speak. I'm just tired. Not tired from running a marathon, tired from being, from carrying everything silently, from waking up already at capacity, from living in a world that treats burnout as baseline. But let me tell you something you might not hear enough. You are allowed to slow down. You are allowed to opt out. You are allowed to rest without explaining why. Your energy is yours. Your time is yours. Your body is not a machine. Your mind is not a server on call. You don't need permission. You don't need a permission slip signed by exhaustion or collapse to say, I'm not available for this. Sometimes the most radical thing you can do is say no and leave it at that. We live in a culture that glorifies busy. The fuller your calendar, the more valuable you seem. The more exhausted you are, the more important people think you must be. The more you say yes, the more likable, reliable, and productive you appear. But what if busy is just a trauma response? What if overcommitting is just another way to outrun emptiness? What if your endless availability is what's silently breaking you? You don't owe anyone your exhaustion. You don't owe the world your constant yes. And you certainly don't owe guilt to the moments you choose peace over pressure. Here's what slowing down really means. It means learning to listen to your body before it has to scream. It means honoring the quiet pull towards solitude without labeling it antisocial. It means reclaiming time, not because you're being lazy, but because you're being alive. Slowing down is not the enemy of progress. It's the soil that growth takes root in. You are not falling behind when you pause. You are remembering how to feel again. Let me ask you, when did doing nothing become such a threat? When did stillness become a problem to fix? When did the idea of sitting in your own presence become so terrifying that you started filling every minute with noise? Here's a radical thought. You don't need to fill every gap, that 5-minute silence between meetings. It doesn't need a scroll, that weekend without plans. It doesn't need a packed itinerary, that hour where you don't know what to do. It doesn't need to be productive. It can just be, and so can you. You don't need a measurable outcome to justify your day. You don't need to make the most of your time every second. You don't need to earn rest through exhaustion, people-pleasing, or emotional labor. You are not a brand. You are not a calendar slot. You are not a quota to be filled. You are a person, and people need time to breathe, to wander, to be still, to just exist. So this is your permission. You can sit on the couch and do absolutely nothing. You can cancel dinner and not replace it with an explanation. You can take the long way home because you feel like it. You can turn your phone off, not because you're overwhelmed, but because silence feels like a gift. And if someone asks why you're not available, you can simply say, I needed time. That's it. Not time to work, not time to fix, not time to recover from a meltdown, just time. Because time spent resting is just as valuable as time spent producing. You don't need to be constantly exhausted to prove you care. You don't need to be chronically available to be loved. You don't need to explain your boundaries to make them valid. Let your no be sacred. Let your stillness be enough. Let your pace be your own, even when the world is sprinting, because you're not here to keep up. You're here to come home to yourself, and that requires space, breath, silence, and the courage to stop when your body says stop. The truth is, the world will keep spinning. The inbox will keep filling. The plans will keep planning. But your peace, that's not promised. So claim it, defend it, slow down. Not because you've earned it, but because you're worthy of it. Even now, even when it's uncomfortable, even when no one else understands. You don't owe the world your burnout. You owe yourself a life that feels like living. You thought this would be faster. You thought if you just rested a little, read the right book, drank enough water, you'd wake up one day and be okay. But healing doesn't work like that. It's not a checklist. It's not a course with clear milestones. It's not a perfectly ascending graph that goes up, up, up. Sometimes it's messy. Sometimes it's slow. Sometimes it feels like you're going backward even when you're moving forward in ways you can't yet see. And that's okay. Because healing isn't linear, and neither are you. Some days, you'll feel strong again. You'll get out of bed with ease. You'll have energy, clarity, motivation. And then, without warning, you'll crash. Suddenly, everything feels too loud, too heavy, too much. And you'll wonder, what's wrong with me? Why am I back here again? Wasn't I doing better? But that question comes from the myth that progress should be permanent, that once you get better, you should stay that way. That's not healing, that's performance. True healing looks more like this: 2 steps forward, 1 step back, a leap sideways, a spiral inward, a quiet sacred pause, and sometimes a full collapse that teaches you something you could have never learned standing up. You're not failing, you're just human. Think about how nature heals. A forest doesn't regrow overnight after a wildfire. It takes seasons, it takes cycles, it takes silence. There are days when nothing seems to bloom above the soil, but underneath, life is rearranging itself. Roots are deepening, the unseen is healing. You too are healing in ways the world can't see, in ways even you can't always see. And that's still valid, that's still real. The lie that healing is linear is rooted in perfectionism. You want to chart your progress like a spreadsheet. You want to see proof. You want to feel certain that all this effort is going somewhere. But certainty is the opposite of healing. Healing asks for trust, for patience, for self-compassion when the voices in your head scream, "You should be further by now." It asks you to stay soft even when everything in you wants to armor up, to keep showing up even when you don't feel like it's working. Because healing doesn't always feel good. Sometimes it feels like grief. Sometimes it feels like boredom. Sometimes it feels like absolute stillness, which is terrifying when you've been running for so long. So, what do you do on the hard days? The setback days? The "I don't know who I am anymore" days? You breathe. You remind yourself that setbacks aren't failures. They're part of the rhythm. You give yourself permission to rest without interpreting it as regression. You reach for softness instead of shame. And you remember this: growth isn't always upward. Sometimes it's deeper. Here's the truth. You don't need to get over it on someone else's timeline. You don't need to explain why you're still healing. You don't need to justify the pace of your progress. Your healing doesn't have to make sense to anyone else. It only has to make space for you, for your body, for your boundaries, for your breakthroughs that arrive quietly, in the stillness between setbacks. There is no finish line here, no certificate, no moment where you'll suddenly be fixed. Because you were never broken. You were just tired, overwhelmed, carrying more than was ever yours to hold. And the fact that you're still here, still trying, still caring, still willing to face yourself, that's not weakness. That's resilience. So let go of the graph in your head. Let go of the pressure to always be better, faster, stronger. Hold space for the version of you who's doing the best they can. Hold grace for the version of you who's hurting again today. Hold love for the version of you who's unsure, confused, afraid. Because every one of those selves deserves to be seen, deserves to be honored, deserves to be included in your healing story. Especially the messy parts, especially the ones you wish you could skip. You are not behind, you are not too late. You are not stuck, you're becoming. And becoming takes time. Let your healing take the time it needs. Let it move like a tide, like a season, like a storm. Let it be imperfect and non-linear and real. Let it be yours. Because healing isn't about becoming someone new. It's about remembering who you were before the world told you to prove yourself. Before the burnout, before the silence, before the guilt. And every twist, fall, and pause on that journey, it counts. Let's get one thing clear. You are not a project. You are not a task list. You are not a performance. Your worth is not waiting at the end of a finished goal. It's not hidden in the next raise. It's not stored in your GPA, your productivity app, or how many hours you grind before collapsing. Your worth just is. And somewhere along the way, the world made you forget that. From an early age, you were taught to earn love, to deserve rest, to justify your existence with proof. They praised your grades, your hustle, your gold stars, and perfect attendance, and wow, you're so responsible. So you learn that doing equals deserving. That being impressive equals being accepted. That success equals safety. And the older you got, the more invisible the finish line became, because the goalpost kept moving. You get the job, they ask for overtime. You hit the deadline, they raise the bar. You succeed, they expect more. And if you falter, you fear losing everything. Because in a system that ties value to performance, any slowdown feels like failure. Any pause feels like risk. And so, you keep producing, even when your soul is screaming, even when you're exhausted, uninspired, running on fumes. You work harder to feel enough, while quietly forgetting what enough even means. But here's the truth you need to remember. You are not a machine. You are not your output. You are a human being, and that's enough. You don't need to justify your rest. You don't need to validate your joy. You don't need to explain why your value isn't up for debate, because you were born worthy, before you ever accomplished a thing, before you ever proved yourself, before the world taught you that value must be earned through burnout. Let's say it clearly. You are not valuable because you're busy. You are not valuable because you say yes. You are not valuable because you tolerate too much for too long. You are valuable because you are, even when you're tired, even when you mess up, even when you fall apart. Your worth does not fluctuate based on your to-do list. Think about someone you love deeply, a child, a best friend, a partner. Would you ever ask them to earn your love by working harder, producing more, sacrificing their well-being? Of course not. Then why is it so hard to extend that same grace to yourself? Why do you believe you must constantly prove that you're not lazy, selfish, or falling behind? Why do you believe that rest requires a receipt? Because the truth is, you live in a culture that rewards overwork, that worships productivity, that tells you, grind now, live later. But later keeps getting pushed. And meanwhile, your life passes in a blur of tasks, deadlines, and self-doubt. It's time to redefine success. Not as achievement, but alignment. Not as output, but aliveness. Not as being the best, but being yourself. Fully, freely, imperfectly. Now. So, what would life look like if you stopped tying your value to what you produce? Would you say no more often? Would you rest without guilt? Would you stop chasing approval from people who only see your utility? Would you give yourself permission to be soft, slow, and deeply human? You deserve to find out. Here's a reminder you might need today. You can rest without being productive first. You can play without earning it. You can take up space without proving why you belong. You can be loved, valued, and enough. Just as you are. No disclaimers, no output required. You are not here to perform. You are here to live. And your worth? It was never up for negotiation. You've probably been told this before. You're too sensitive. You take everything too personally. You need to toughen up. Why do you let little things bother you? So, you started second-guessing yourself. You began holding in tears that wanted to fall, laughing off jokes that hurt, pretending things didn't sting when they absolutely did. You taught yourself to be numb, to not let it get to you, to filter your emotions into something more digestible, less intense, less you. And maybe that helped for a while. Until it didn't. Until the numbness felt worse than the pain. Until the pressure of holding it all in became heavier than just letting it be felt. Here's what no one told you. You're not too sensitive. You're just not disconnected anymore. You're not numb. You're awake. You're not dramatic. You're alive. You're not broken. You're human in a world that tells you not to be. Being sensitive doesn't mean you're weak. It means you feel. It means you notice the energy in a room. You pick up on what's not being said. You carry other people's pain like it's your own, because, in a way, it is. You feel your surroundings like weather. You absorb emotions like oxygen. You notice the cracks in things others walk right past. And yes, that can be exhausting, overwhelming, too much to handle sometimes. But it's also a gift, a strength the world forgot how to honor. Sensitivity isn't a flaw. It's your system telling you what's real. It's the reason you catch injustice others ignore. It's why you're the first to notice when someone's off, even if they swear they're fine. It's why music moves you, why silence comforts you, why chaos drains you. And it's why you felt out of place in a world that equates stoicism with strength. Because your strength looks different. Your sensitivity isn't just a personality trait. It's your nervous system doing what it was designed to do. Respond to life, to all of it. The beauty, the heartbreak, the joy, the grief, the fear, the wonder. You were never meant to mute that. You were never meant to be fine all the time. You were meant to feel fully, deeply, honestly. And yeah, that can feel like too much. But maybe the problem isn't how much you feel. Maybe it's how little space you've been given to process it. Think about it. How often have you been told to just get over it? to move on, let it go, don't be so emotional. When did emotion become the enemy? When did being affected by the world become something to be ashamed of? The truth is, you weren't too sensitive. You were just surrounded by people who were too disconnected to hold what you felt. People who couldn't handle their own feelings, let alone yours. People who labeled your honesty as weakness because it threatened their comfort. But that's not your fault, and it's not your job to shrink yourself for their sake. Let me say this clearly. Feeling deeply is not a liability. It's not an obstacle. It's not something to fix. It's a superpower. It's what makes you intuitive, compassionate, creative, attuned to beauty, capable of extraordinary empathy. The world needs more of that, not less. Yes, you'll need to learn boundaries. Yes, you'll need to protect your peace. Yes, you'll need to stop absorbing what isn't yours to carry. But none of that requires shutting off your heart. It just means learning how to honor it, to let your sensitivity guide you without drowning you, to let yourself feel without apologizing for it, to know the difference between what belongs to you and what the world tried to hand you because you had open hands. So, here's your permission. Cry when you need to cry. Rest when the world feels heavy. Say, that hurt, even if no one else thinks it should have. Trust your intuition, even when it makes no logical sense. Feel without filters. Because your feelings are real, and the moment you stop judging them, they become your compass, not your curse. You were never too sensitive. You were just finally ready to stop numbing, to stop pretending, to stop carrying other people's comfort as your responsibility. You are allowed to feel it all, and you are allowed to survive it. Not by becoming harder, but by becoming truer. Sensitivity is not something you outgrow. It's something you grow into. Welcome back to yourself. There comes a moment after all the over-giving, over-explaining, over-extending, when your soul quietly whispers, I'm done. Done with the constant noise. Done with the subtle guilt. Done with bending just to make others comfortable. That moment, it's not weakness, it's wisdom. Because eventually, you realize your peace is sacred, and it's not up for negotiation anymore. Maybe you didn't even notice it slipping away at first. Just a few minutes here, a few emotional favors there. Just one more yes you didn't mean. Just one more dinner you were too tired to attend. One more project you didn't have the bandwidth for, but accepted anyway because that's just what you do. You were raised on politeness, trained in people-pleasing, taught that being liked was more important than being well. And you were good at it. So good, in fact, you forgot what peace even felt like. But here's what they don't tell you. Being easygoing costs you something. Being nice all the time drains your reserves. And constantly saying yes when your body is screaming no is a slow form of self-abandonment. Peace doesn't just disappear, it gets traded quietly, incrementally, for approval, for acceptance, for the illusion of harmony. But if the cost of keeping the peace is losing your own, that's not peace, that's performative silence. So, let's rewrite the script. You don't need to justify your boundaries. You don't need a crisis to deserve solitude. You don't need to wait until you're on the edge of collapse to protect your energy. You can choose peace preemptively. You can say, I'm not available for this. That doesn't work for me. I need space right now. No, thank you. No apology, no guilt, no long-winded explanation. Because boundaries don't require permission. They require practice. Here's something radical. Saying no isn't rude. It's responsible. And enforcing your boundaries isn't selfish. It's sacred. Your energy isn't infinite. Your presence isn't owed. Your peace isn't negotiable. So if someone calls you cold for not people-pleasing anymore, that's just projection. If they call you difficult for finally honoring your limits, that's their discomfort, not your duty. You don't exist to be digestible. You exist to be whole. Protecting your peace doesn't mean building walls. It means building clarity. It means being honest about what fuels you and what depletes you. It means giving yourself permission to change your mind, step back, log off, walk away. It means understanding this. Saying no to others is often a yes to yourself. And that yes, it's how you rebuild trust with the part of you that's been screaming to be heard. Let me ask you, how many times have you said yes out of fear, but meant no with your entire soul? How many times have you stayed to avoid conflict, but left yourself in pieces? How many times have you over-explained your boundaries to people who had no intention of honoring them? You're allowed to stop doing that now. You're allowed to let no be a full sentence. You're allowed to let go of the need to be liked. You're allowed to choose your peace over their expectations. Every single time. Because here's what peace actually looks like. Not reacting to every provocation. Letting people be wrong about you without correcting them. Saying, I don't have capacity for that, and meaning it. Choosing rest before burnout. Giving yourself space to breathe before you're gasping. That's not weakness. That's mastery. That's you reclaiming your life. One quiet, powerful no at a time. So, here's your reminder. You are not here to be everything to everyone. You are not here to stretch until you break. You are not here to keep the peace by losing yourself in the process. You are here to be well, to be whole, to be aligned with your truth. And if that truth makes others uncomfortable, that's okay. Your peace is still not up for negotiation. Let's pause here and ask something no one asks enough. When was the last time you let yourself feel joy without guilt? Not after checking everything off the list, not after proving your worth, not as a reward for suffering, just joy, because you're alive, because you're allowed, because you don't need to earn it. For so many of us, joy feels dangerous. It feels irresponsible, like a distraction from all the things we haven't finished, all the people we haven't helped, all the ways we still feel behind. We've been conditioned to believe that joy comes after struggle, that it must be purchased with pain, that unless we've suffered enough, worked enough, sacrificed enough, we haven't earned it yet. So we postpone it. We say, I'll relax after this deadline. I'll travel once I have more money. I'll smile when I lose the weight. I'll be happy when I'm successful. But joy doesn't live in the future. It's not something you chase. It's something you choose, right now, as you are. Here's the thing. Joy isn't selfish. It's not indulgent. It's not ignorant. It's medicine. It's rebellion. It's healing in a world that profits off your burnout. And most importantly, it's yours. You don't have to wait for everything to be perfect. You don't have to solve every problem first. You don't have to shrink yourself, punish yourself, or prove yourself before you're allowed to feel good. That's the lie they sold you. That joy must be delayed. That struggle gives it value. That only the productive are worthy of pleasure. But joy doesn't care about your resume. It doesn't ask for credentials. It doesn't require you to be deserving. Joy just wants to live through you, to move through your breath, to radiate in your laugh, to soften your edges, to remind you that you're still human, not just a machine for output. So, what if you didn't wait anymore? What if you let yourself dance before the work is done? What if you smiled before you fixed everything? What if you let the sunlight touch your face without apology? What if you stopped rehearsing for joy and started remembering it? Joy isn't found in big milestones. It's hidden in tiny, ordinary moments. The warmth of your coffee, the quiet in the morning, a song that hits just right, the laughter that bubbles up for no reason, a breeze that feels like a whisper from something greater than you. These are the things burnout blinds you to, but they're still here, waiting. You just have to slow down enough to notice them. And let's be real. Joy can feel scary when you've lived in survival mode because it asks you to soften, to open, to risk disappointment. When you've spent so long bracing for the next hit, joy can feel like a trap, but it's not. It's a doorway. A way back to yourself. A reminder that there is more to life than getting through it. Here's what I want you to hear. Joy doesn't cancel out your struggle. It coexists with it. You can feel joy and still be healing. You can laugh even if you cry this morning. You can rest even if the world is still on fire. Your nervous system doesn't need more punishment. It needs moments of peace, moments of softness, moments of joy. Not earned, not deserved, just allowed. So, give yourself permission to laugh loudly, to rest deeply, to savor slowly, to celebrate yourself, especially when no one else notices. Joy doesn't need to be big. It just needs to be yours. And the more you allow it, the more resilient you become. Because joy doesn't make you fragile. It makes you fortified. It reminds your body what safety feels like. It tells your brain you're allowed to feel good. And that message, it rewires everything. You are not here just to endure. You are not here to pay penance for being alive. You are not here to suffer your way into worthiness. You are here to feel, to love, to rest, to heal, to delight. So, take the day off, buy the flowers, eat the cake, laugh too loud, say yes to something silly. Not because you earned it, but because you don't have to. Somewhere along the way, you became the strong one, the dependable one, the one who always knows what to say, the one who shows up, stays late, and never complains too loud. So they leaned on you, again, and again, and again, until "I've got it" became your default. Until "I'm fine" became a mask you forgot how to take off. Until the only person not checking in on you was you. Maybe no one ever told you. You're allowed to be held too. You don't have to carry everything by yourself. You don't have to be the strong one every single day. You don't have to prove your strength by how well you suffer silently. Burnout thrives in isolation. It grows in the quiet spaces where you pretend you're okay, where you convince yourself, "I shouldn't need help," where you shame yourself for being tired instead of asking why you've been expected to be superhuman for so long. Let's be real. You were never meant to do life alone. You weren't built to carry invisible weight on your back while smiling through your teeth. You were built for connection, for softness, for spaces where it's safe to say, "I'm struggling. I can't do this alone. I need help." Not as a weakness, but as a sacred act of truth. We live in a culture that idolizes independence. Do it yourself, fix it yourself, handle it yourself. And maybe you tried. Maybe you got really good at it. So good that nobody noticed you were breaking. But self-sufficiency isn't the goal. Being seen is. Being witnessed in your mess. Being loved in your unpolished, undone moments. Being held when you have nothing left to give. You deserve that. You've always deserved that. Here's what healing often really looks like. Someone texting you at the exact moment you needed it. Crying on the phone with a friend at 11:47 p.m. Letting someone sit with you in silence without fixing anything. Letting someone cook for you because you're too tired to microwave leftovers. It's not always pretty, it's not always Instagrammable, but it's real, and it matters. You're not a burden for needing support. You're a human being, with limits, with soft spots, with a nervous system that needs reassurance, not just responsibility. So, if you're carrying too much right now, this is your invitation to set something down. Let someone in, text the friend, tell the truth. Let your "I'm fine" crack just a little. I promise. The right people will meet you in the mess. They won't judge you for it. They'll say, "Why didn't you tell me sooner?" And maybe you'll say, "I didn't want to be a problem." And they'll remind you, you're not a problem. You're a person. And people need people. Let me say it clearly. You do not need to hit rock bottom before you're allowed to ask for support. You do not need to justify your struggle with perfect words and bulletproof logic. You do not need to wait until it gets unbearable to say, "I need help." You are allowed to need. You are allowed to rest in someone else's strength. You are allowed to be someone's soft place to land, and let them be yours too. Burnout makes you forget that you matter. But connection reminds you, not because someone fixes you, but because someone sees you and stays, even when you're not okay, especially when you're not okay. And sometimes that's all it takes to start healing again. So, no, you weren't meant to carry this alone. And you don't have to anymore. You're allowed to lean, to open, to exhale. Let others show up for you the way you show up for them. Because love isn't earned through suffering. It's revealed in your willingness to be real. Here's something nobody told you growing up. You can begin again, not once, not twice. As many times as it takes. There is no limit, no expiration date on your ability to begin again. No number of failures that disqualifies you from redemption. You don't run out of chances, you run out of permission, because you stop giving it to yourself. But it's still yours. You can reclaim it right now. Maybe this isn't the life you thought you'd be living. Maybe you look around and wonder, how did I get here? Too far from who you used to be, too disconnected from who you want to be, stuck in a version of life that looks okay on the outside, but feels hollow in your chest. Maybe you took a wrong turn. Or maybe you've been surviving for so long that you forgot you had a say. And the truth is, you do. You always have. Starting over doesn't require drama. You don't need to burn your whole life down. You don't need to run away or disappear. You don't even need to have it all figured out. You just need to decide, this isn't working for me anymore. And I'm allowed to choose different, even if others don't understand, even if I don't know what comes next, even if I'm scared, especially if you're scared, because fear is part of the path. It shows up when you're close to something real. Maybe you're afraid of wasting time, of starting from scratch, of what people will think if you admit that this version of your life doesn't fit anymore. But here's a reframe. You're not starting from scratch. You're starting from experience. And experience is never wasted. Every false start, every dead end, every pause and pivot, they taught you something. Something essential. Something you needed to know before your next beginning. You don't have to get it perfect this time. You just have to get honest. Honest about what you want, what you're tired of, what you're no longer willing to tolerate. Honest about the life that's calling you and the one you've outgrown. Starting over is not a failure. It's a form of self-respect. It's saying, I'm not going to abandon myself just to maintain an image. I'm not going to keep walking a path just because I started on it. I'm allowed to change my mind. And you are. Let go of the timeline. Let go of the version of you that only existed to impress people who never truly saw you. Let go of the shame that says you should have had it all figured out by now. Who said healing had a deadline? Who said growth was linear? Who said starting over was a sign of weakness? It's not. It's bravery, disguised as disruption. So, what if today, instead of pushing through a life that no longer fits, you paused? What if you listened, really listened, to the quiet voice beneath the noise? The one that says, you're allowed to begin again. You're allowed to want more. You're allowed to walk away from what doesn't align. You're allowed to rewrite the story. Not someday, now. And if you feel tired of trying, tired of beginning, tired of the idea that starting over is just more effort you don't have, then let me offer you this. You don't have to leap. You can crawl into your next beginning. You can inch your way forward. You can move in spirals, not straight lines. You can change your life gently, quietly, softly, one breath at a time, and it still counts. You are not late. You are not behind. You are not broken. You are in process. You are allowed to start over, without shame, without needing anyone's permission, as many times as you need, because you are not a failure. You are a becoming. And every time you choose yourself again, that's not weakness, that's freedom. Not a productive one, not a focused inhale designed to center you. Just breathe. Because right now, this moment, this exact second you are in, you are worthy, even if you're behind. Even if you haven't checked a single thing off your list. Even if you've done nothing notable today. Even if all you've done is survive, you are still enough. We live in a world addicted to doing, to chasing, to constant forward motion. We're taught to measure our worth in output. How many tasks we finished, how early we got up, how much we crushed it. And when we're still, we panic because stillness feels like failure. But what if you didn't have to perform your worth anymore? What if rest wasn't something to earn, but something to honor? What if doing nothing wasn't lazy, but healing? What if stillness wasn't empty, but full of wisdom, presence, and quiet truth? There is so much power in the pause, not because it gets you somewhere, but because it reminds you, you are not what you produce. You are not your performance. You are not a machine. You are a being, a living, breathing soul, and you were never meant to run like a robot. Let go of the hustle voice that says, you're wasting time. You haven't earned your rest. You should be doing more. That voice doesn't serve you. It never did. Because the truth is, you're allowed to exist outside of utility. You're allowed to take up space even when you're still. You're allowed to wake up and just be. Not striving, not improving, not optimizing, just being. So, if today you feel tired, if your body is heavy, if your mind is foggy, if your soul is saying, please, not another sprint, listen. You're not broken. You're not failing. You're just done pretending that your worth is conditional. Conditional on output. Conditional on mood. Conditional on pleasing everyone. It's not. It never was. You've always been enough. Before the deadlines. Before the accomplishments. Before the people-pleasing. You were worthy when you were born, and you're worthy now. In your softness, in your stillness, in your sacred quiet. The world will keep spinning without your hustle. Your inbox can wait. And the people who truly love you will understand. And the dreams meant for you will not vanish just because you took a nap. You don't have to prove your value. You are valuable. Even on the days when you don't feel like much. Even when you're just curled up on the couch drinking tea, staring out the window, letting yourself feel it all. That is not wasted time. That is medicine. So close your eyes, drop your shoulders, exhale the guilt. You don't owe anyone a performance. You don't owe the world your exhaustion. You don't have to become something bigger, smarter, faster, or better to deserve love. You already do. If no one told you this today, let me be the one. You are enough. You are not lazy. You are tired. You are healing. You are becoming. You are allowed to rest. And not because you've earned it, but because you exist. That's all. And it's more than enough. The final whisper. This isn't laziness. It's burnout. Was never just about fatigue. It was about remembering you are human. You are allowed to feel. You are allowed to pause. You are allowed to choose differently. And most of all, you are allowed to come home to yourself, no matter how far you've strayed, no matter how many times you've started over, no matter what the world told you about being productive. You are already enough. You are already worthy. And you are finally remembering what you've always known. You don't have to do more to deserve more. You're free now. Rest. You've earned nothing, and still you deserve everything.